Congress is shut down, people. Have you heard about that? That's right. With their whopping 10% approval rating, which it's like as high as it's been in years, they decided to walk out. This is the House GOP, decided to shut down the government, mostly the Tea Party faction, because they're not happy with Obamacare. But don't take my word for it. Let's find out a little information about the shutdown. Okay, so a real simple explanation of the shutdown and what it means. Basically, every year the government has to pass a budget by a certain deadline to continue existing. This deadline was midnight on Monday. This year, some Republicans, basically the Tea Party wing in the House, refused to pass a budget unless we get rid of or delay Obamacare, which obviously Obama has backed and the Supreme Court has said is legal. Obama and the Democrats say they won't be held hostage by Republicans trying to get what they want, since everyone, including Congress and the Supreme Court, already upheld Obamacare. That's what I just said. And the government will come back when they pass a budget. Okay, so we are in day 2 of this. The World War II memorial was blocked off. There's this thing at the NIH where kids with cancer aren't getting trials. I mean, this is just absolutely absurd. As we tape this right this second, it just broke that Obama is going to meet with Boehner and Harry Reid today, so maybe something will happen. But President Obama had this to say at the White House yesterday.
Republicans in the House of Representatives refused to fund the government unless we defunded or dismantled the Affordable Care Act. They've shut down the government over an ideological crusade to deny affordable health insurance to millions of Americans. In other words, they demanded ransom just for doing their job.
Okay, so there you have it. President Obama is being very clear. This is a law that was already passed, and now they're trying to stop the government because they don't like the law, which everybody knew. Is 100% blame here on this Tea Party faction of the GOP?
I'm going to put it at they get the 2%. Senator Ted Cruz gets another 98. Because this, I mean, this
You're
is
really laser pointing.
Yeah,
it
this
on
is
him.
where it originated. I mean, of course, the different resolution, or at least their different budget, came up through the House. Yeah. Ted Cruz is a senator. You wonder why I'm connecting the two. He basically, and this has been said today too, he basically told them, I need you guys to send up this stupid bill that defunds Obamacare, or at least delays it for another year, and then include it with, I have a great idea with our budget so that we can now they'll be forced to go along with what we need to do. Now, he was getting pushback from that before it finally happened. But we had people like Representative Peter King, and he came out and said, this guy is crazy, but you know what? We're going to give him what he wants and watch him just flounder and watch him fall apart in front of all of us.
Peter King, a guy who I'm pretty sure you wouldn't agree with on 90% of the stuff, but you're giving him some credit.
Exactly.
Here.
Now, with his thing, now I've also said a few weeks ago, he's already mentioned a little bit he wants to run for president, which is insane to me. But and then so if you read, you know, I guess the writing on the wall, so does Senator Cruz. So I think he's already going after Cruz to be like, this guy's going to have way more support than I will, more money, so let me make sure I get ahead of this and disparage him right now. I think that's his motivation, which is fine, because they're going to fight later, but he actually comes on the right side of this because there is no real end game. Harry Reid said this is dead when he gets to the Senate. Obama said, come on, you think I'm going to sign this? So it's never going to work that way. So it was all just a stunt, really, to get more attention on Senator Cruz. Now, the House went along with it, and partially for this reason, and I think others went along with it because they kind of have to because they're Republicans and they don't have any real thoughts for themselves. So now the support is now building behind what Cruz started, and it looks like the entire party has started, and it's damaging them all.
Right. Okay, so Jayar has given us a nuts and bolts here, but what do you think about the broader point of everyone having to stick with party all the time and being held hostage by this little group of people and all that?
I'll use some media reference analogies. I liken this scenario to Alan Rickman robbing the Nakatomi building, claiming that this is very political when they were just robbing the building.
They just wanted money.
They were just robbing the building and pretending it was political. And that's from his perspective, that's what he's doing. Now, let's go over to what is Obama doing. I think this is Obama's Breaking Bad closing episode, where he doesn't mind how much damage this does his image as long as he knows he completely took the other side out in the process. Ah,
I like these references.
He did like a Walter on him, you know?
Yeah, that was our first Die Hard reference ever on the show. I like that.
Oh, there you go.
Very nice.
They are playing a fake indignation thing where clearly if you examine their behavior, they don't actually care about any of the things. That's the whole point of being fake royalty or whatever you think royalty's new name is for the 21st century, so you can live on this land and be it. oligarchy, whatever you want to call it. I think oligarchy, the whole point of oligarchy is I get to tell you not to do something, and then when I close my door, I get to do it.
Exactly. So
what's the whole point of being me?
Yeah. So speaking of the fake indignation, because that's what this now seems to be about, now that we're into day 2 of this idea of the World War II memorial being closed and the veterans can't get in there, and that the Republicans are now saying, well, we'll not even get paid because everyone's just playing these little games. How do we get this thing? How do we get the discussion out of the nonsensical games? Because if you watch cable news, it's just endless bickering back and forth. And
you mean for it to get back to actual nuts and bolts and American people actually see and hear that stuff? I don't know, because that's
what this is all about.
As you said, as I was trying to rush through all of it, and there was still 5 more things I was thinking, I was like, this is beginning to get boring. I should stop.
Yeah.
That was just the internal voice in my head was going, I should stop with this spattering of everything that's going on because no one wants to hear that. And so that's going to be the general conventional wisdom.
The assignment is, regardless of what you're faced with, you try and get it out anyway. And regardless of how the initial reaction to something that is like waking up in the tub of goo in the Matrix with the wires shooting at your head and you realize what your real existence is, that's kind of shocking. A lot of people don't want to admit that right off the bat, because what does it make you do? It makes you're so decades long wrong. You've been wrong for decades. Who wants to own that? Who wants to say, I've been born wrong?
Right.
My
now, of course,
family
they don't
was
see
wrong.
it that way, of course.
Well, there's a very convenient way to lock that out, even though there may be a whisper trying to remind you of it when you're shaving in the morning. And there's ways to go into denial, but I think that other voice, when enough data is faced the other way, that voice inside gets louder and louder. You can't ignore me anymore, man. It's on every channel you flip to.
Yeah.
Now you got to look.
So playing devil's advocate for a second, going with what you're saying, if the Republicans, if this group really believes that this law is going to bankrupt the country, if they really believe what they're saying, that this is going to bankrupt the country, that this is an overreach of government and it's unconstitutional, even though the Supreme Court said it is, then shouldn't we maybe give them a little credit for standing up for what they believe in? And I'm totally playing devil's advocate because it's obviously not what I believe. But if that's what they believe, do they deserve any credit for that?
No, I mean, because I mean, if you go into it, you have to follow. You're a product of the environment. You're a politician. You know how this whole thing works. There's plenty of things that we don't like. I think President Obama came up with this analogy. He said, we want background checks for guns. And we've been fighting for it. We still haven't gotten it. Because there's still a lot of Americans who are hell-bent on shooting each other for no reason. And actually people who don't need to have these guns in their hands to continue to shoot other people. Now he said, should I, because this isn't what I want for in our government and our laws, now hold up things that are actually responsible and are necessary for us to do to get this other part of the law that I want, because there's a segment of the population that is dying for it, or not dying for it, when others are dying.
Literally dying. Kids are going to, cancer patients now can't get in.
Yeah.
They're not letting them in anymore. They lock the door, and there's a certain kind of Dexter missing chromosome kind of human that's okay with that. And there's a bunch of them. But, and the last thing they want is that part exposed. Oops. That part's out now. So I think the walls are closing in on that kind of person, because it was a party set up for a kind of person. The kind of person that there's whatever kind of mean crap is going on inside me, I don't have to change a thing. I got a welcoming carpet for the one place that's, you're the guy we're looking for.
Do you think that's
just like you?
Do you think that's based on understanding of what's going on, or do you think it's because we're pulling on heartstrings? Because that's all politicians ever do. Which is why we had stuff like the National Zoo tweeted, "Oh, well, we can't have the panda cam anymore."
People are freaking out about the pandas. These kids can't get cancer treatment, literally, and the panda cam, holy cow, that's leading the news. All right, so final thought on this. This is proof to me more than anything else that I hate to be that guy, but we need a third party in this country. We need somebody between these nut jobs on the right, and then they keep dragging the left more to the center. I mean, it just seems crazy. But is there any chance? Is there any chance for it?
Remember where the compass is. Remember where the compass needle ought to go, because that gets moved wherever someone with the most amount of power could put the middle way over to the right. And you've got this little sliver left on the end of the bathroom counter, and she took it over with makeup, and that's the middle. And the remembering it's about others. And so they're trying to get into everyone's head, forget about others, you're on your own. And that kind of thinking, I think, is up for review across the board, because they made a mistake. They started screwing a lot of them, too. and they're waking up. That was like, they didn't do everything in the right order.
Right.
And their own believers are really in deep denial, but they're starting to question, once you take my supplies away. And they're taking their supplies away too.
Doesn't have to change the makeup of Americans for us to do that, though, because Americans we're so competitive. Of course, our first thing you always hear is, we're number one, we're the best this, we're the most exceptional, all these things. So then that's to our macro. But then within our own country, we have our sports teams, we have our collegiate teams, we have our schools we went to just for pride themselves. So now everything we have is factions that were broken down. So everything is a competition. So how many people, enough to garner this third party, are going to default from the Republican Party, default from the Democratic Party, and say, I'm no longer with those the teams I've been loyal to for my entire life. My grandfather was a Democrat, all this stuff. How do we do that on a large enough scale is the hard question.
Well, I think that's a perfect finish on that. And to that point, you know, for all these people on the right that think America is so great and America can be a great country, well, then maybe giving health care to everybody will actually work if we're as great as we keep saying we are. Okay, so CNN, which used to be the most trusted name in news and now is just something that's sort of between Fox News and MSNBC, I'm not really sure anymore, they have brought back Crossfire, which is the worst of the partisan hackfest that we deal with endlessly in this country. You've got your two guys on the left and your two guys on the right, and they give you talking points, and they yell at each other, and they bring on guests, and you know what everyone's thinking already, and they stick to party line. Okay, that's fine. But now it's gotten even worse because Newt Gingrich, who's one of their hosts on the right, obviously, he no longer has to disclose when he's raising money for the very people that he's interviewing. So let's first look at a statement by CNN's EVP of Standards and Practices, Rick Davis. This is their original statement before the show launched. If Newt is helping fund a candidate and that candidate's on the show or being discussed on the show, of course he'll disclose that. Disclosure is important when it's relevant. Okay, I think we can all agree with that, that when the host of a show is raising money for someone he's interviewing, people should know about that. Maybe a little something on the bottom, maybe a little something to the camera. But no, they've actually changed their policy over at CNN, and he no longer has to. Let's take a look at the new policy. We are clarifying the policy and making it clear Newt Gingrich is not in violation. The policy: if a Crossfire co-host has made a financial contribution to a politician who appears on the program or is the focus of the program, disclosure is not required during the show since the co-host's political support is obvious by his or her point of view expressed in the program. This is beyond bonkers ridiculous because he is the host of a show, and occasionally Republicans don't always agree with Republicans or Democrats don't always agree with Democrats, but they're basically telling you this show is so biased that we are just throwing all journalistic practices out the window. I know for a fact here at TYT we would never do that. Cenk would never let me do it. He would never do it himself. Jayar, I'll start with you on this one because you are a TYTer. Isn't this exactly why we need independent news and online news and everything?
That's the thing, and as basic as it is, there's been times when Cenk was interviewing someone, and he'd say, you know what, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm in favor of your candidacy, I'm in favor of your campaign, so let's put that out in the first place. And I'm sure he didn't give me any money because we don't have any money to give to any of these guys. So, or the raising of money. The most money-raising thing we have, or fundraising we do, is for Wolfpack, which has been repeated over and over again throughout the whole situation. But so when it comes to this is just protecting we have Newt Gingrich. We can't lose his perspective because that's awesome. So we have to keep his perspective on the show. So we're willing to change everything we do because they feel they're being left behind. This all goes back to the battle they need to get the ratings up or to get ahead. As we were talking about before, it's the reason why the discourse in America is so low because all we can think is Team Democrat, Team Republican. And when you have a show that completely exhibits it every day, it's like a basketball game every day between Team Democrat and Republican. They're thinking, well, we have one of the superstars, we have to keep him. We want to change everything for that because if we don't, they feel they're going to fall apart.
So is the problem here that because this is a daily show and it's inside the Beltway and one of the hosts is a former presidential candidate who's been around forever, they'd have to put that little disclosure up constantly, right? Wouldn't that disclosure, if they were really going to show you who he's linked to and who they're all linked to, that disclosure would never go away.
Yeah, it would be like pop-up video.
Right. Yeah.
Just to totally date myself.
No,
that's the thing with Crossfire. Geez, yeah. Oh, weepy. Reminiscent tear.
Everybody loves pop-up video. That's okay.
Yeah, the thing with Crossfire is that you know who gets hurt in Crossfire. It's always the innocent stuck in between, and They're a lot of bravado, a lot of shouting to make it interesting when there's no reason to shout for this portion of the topic.
Yeah.
Just trying to keep the old farts awake in their easy chairs. Wake up, Pops, we're talking about some...
What?
You know?
What?
Yeah, right. And it's become all substance. It's a substanceless fluff now.
Yeah.
It seems like barking for barking's sake.
Yeah.
And they'll cover a topic. They got that CNN standard. Well, that's all we can do right now. Well, we'll have to leave it there. The Wolf Blitzer bailout. You know?
Of course. Yeah.
And when you just look at their sponsors, and you just see who runs the whole operation, how could they?
Yeah. So
how could they possibly not be abridged at this point?
Yeah. So whose fault is this, though? Is it this television networks? Is this CNN's fault because they're really backtracking on pretty basic journalistic standards that you have to? It's really low fruit. Or is this really the fault of the political machine because everybody is connected? Or is it a combo, or am I missing something altogether?
I want to put all of it on CNN because, I mean, you already had your general practices, you had your guidelines for what you would normally follow. And, I mean, at least I put it out there. I don't know how hard you had to scour to get this information about the change.
Politico got it. I mean, it wasn't that hard.
So they're putting it out there and basically thinking, well, we've run the gambit of all of our BS that we throw at Americans. So if we change our policies and say we're not going to keep telling you how we're breaking the rules that we set up in the first place, they're going to forget about it in a week because they really don't care. Because all they care about is seeing more people yell at each other.
Yeah.
We need that rather than real practices.
Yeah, so then is the other problem here that these guys, they're all friends too. You know what I mean? It's not just about money, but everyone you see on CNN constantly, they're playing golf together, they're doing the White House correspondence. They all want to be invited to the same parties and go to the same dinners.
And they put a puppet show on for the kids.
Yeah.
Pretending they're on opposite sides, basically, you know.
Yeah.
You know,
is that why the camera's so close to all their heads in Crossfire also? Because it actually looks like puppets? It's just two floating heads with that black background. It's like
Team America, yeah.
Exactly.
In my head of like, well, now I'm dating myself. When I still call it the WWF. I still do.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. So when the bad guy comes out and interviews with Gene Okerlund.
Yeah.
And he goes, I'm going to kick your ass. Just wait till I get out there. And then, off screen, they're the best of friends. There's been guys that said the bad guys of wrestling are the nicest guys. And a lot of times the good guys of wrestling are actually assholes in real life.
Yeah, right.
And really, the bad guys are the nicest ones you'll meet in person. So they're out there to do the thing. So they can't, there's a show. They can't go out there and disclose, well, Triple H actually doesn't dislike The Rock. They had dinner last night. Their kids get along great.
No,
they
can't tell me that.
You're
trying to take apart my belief system.
Yeah, and on that note, I'll date myself and let you all know that I learned my entire political philosophy from Jake the Snake Roberts. Ted Cruz, he has sort of started this whole government shutdown thing because he hates Obamacare, did his 21-hour filibuster that actually wasn't a filibuster, sort of, because it was against a Republican House bill, and he's a Republican in the Senate, okay, blah, blah, blah. Did you know he is backed by a pot-smoking gay billionaire? Yeah, that's right. Peter Thiel, who is the founder of PayPal. He was also one of the first investors in Facebook. He has given a ton of money to Ted Cruz. Actually, I have a number here. He gave $2 million to the Club for Growth, which is not a hair club. I thought it was on first look. That's a super PAC that then gave over $600,000 to Ted Cruz's election campaign in Texas. Now, some of the other things that Peter Thiel has given money to include space travel, life extension, anti-aging, artificial intelligence, and he even gave $100,000 to 20 kids not to go to college, just to see what would happen with their lives. So he's into some pretty progressive scientific things, which all seem very reverse of what Ted Cruz believes. What do we make of this, and how much can we get out of that someone gives someone money? Can we really glean everything into them? Can you really figure it out about them?
Yeah, I mean, this one's a little bit of an easy bouncing ball to follow here. Peter Thiel is a staunch libertarian.
Yep.
He's all about, the extreme measures of people being able to do whatever they want as long as everything is privatized. Now, Ted Cruz has to appeal to his more conservative constituents. However, he also is a kind of, very strict constitutionalist, according to what Ted Cruz is saying right now. At least he's coming out swinging like constitutionalist. Constitution. It's one of his favorite words. Well, that's in line with what Peter Thiel is in line with. So even though you wouldn't think that maybe on a social scene that they would match up, at least for what Peter Thiel's immediate goals are for his finances and where he wants his super PAC to go, and the Club for Growth is heavy, heavy libertarian stuff, he sees that Ted Cruz is kind of the person who's an up-and-coming, loudmouth type of person that would champion him. Now, it's interesting is Ted Cruz has kind of been distancing himself from Peter Thiel in certain circles, going, oh gosh, well, the gayness and the pot smoking and basically all these things that are central to probably things in his daily life and that makes up who he am has nothing to do with all this money and the fact that he loves the private sector and he loves the Constitution too.
Right. What could Ted Cruz hate more than gayness and pot smoking? Right. Can you even think of, I guess, Obamacare?
Not liking the Constitution, apparently. So it would be interesting and it would be a real opportunity for Ted Cruz, which unfortunately I doubt I don't think he'll take it. But if Ted Cruz really wanted to come out and be a leader in his party, what he would say is, look, this person's values are in line with mine. He is gay. He, smokes marijuana. Yes. But his values are in line with mine, that he wants less government, that he wants less people up in our business or whatever, the Tea Party's obsessed with, and actually turn the party around and say we can have people that don't look like us, sound like us, and have the same social values on our side, and he could turn the whole party around.
Right. So, Rick, before I let you jump in, so these other things like space travel, that is something that Ted Cruz is not big on funding, I assure you. I actually can't swear to a fact, but life extension, anti-aging, artificial intelligence, I mean, these are all the type of things that get cut from budgets because they're based in science.
Thiel's just putting the hip in hypocrisy.
Yeah.
And that's all he wants, because he's hoping no one puts this level of analysis into the issue and hope that whatever they hear about the story, they'll assume it's a lie. And they'll go right back to whatever their world looked like right before they heard this news. There's ways to lock truth out. They've figured out how to do it.
Yeah.
So I think they're doing it on purpose, though. I think that this is in line with what Peter Thiel wants. Peter Thiel is a strict constitutionalist and libertarian, so he believes that he should be, with his private money funding space travel, funding all these things. So Ted Cruz again would get on board with him by saying the government shouldn't be funding all these experiments and all these unnecessary things. This should come from the private sector so you could profit on it once. They are very much in line. This relationship makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Again, if they could just come around and say, we don't care if you're gay and you smoke weed, you have all the same values as us.
Yeah, so in a weird way, so they're sort of like an unholy alliance, but in a bizarre way, it's sort of based in things that they seem to believe. So is something like this okay? Can, for example, just going with the gay thing, is it okay for someone who is gay, who I assume believes in equality, to go ahead and back someone who doesn't believe in that? Or is that an overriding issue related to all the other things?
I think our standards for okay and theirs are two entirely different planets.
Yeah.
What we call okay is not even on their radar. And what they call okay, there's just different things that they want, and the shields they'll put up. And a lot of these things are just, but claiming to be Christian is often just a safe house for a creepy dude. There goes, now you've got to go through that 9 miles of concrete I just put between us.
Yeah.
And I'm safer here longer is all it is, And I think a lot of what they're saying into the camera is it seems like the mainstream news has a tendency to ask a liar if they're a liar, which is the definition of insanity. I don't think they mean most of what they say on the air. I think they just want us, their followers, to believe they mean it. They want their followers to be antithetical to them in many ways, as long as it serves them on the yard. That's a dog you want outside, but not in the house.
Yeah. So what's the deal with libertarians and the gay issue? Because to me, a true libertarian who believes in liberty and limited government, and that you should believe in what you believe and own your body and your mind, they should be. Rand Paul and Ted Cruz, by the definition of what they're supposed to believe in, should believe in marriage equality.
That's my point.
And that's
I don't mean anything you're saying. Look at the memo that morning. I gotta mean this today.
Right. Yeah. I think that they are in this weird. So I covered the LNC. I covered the Libertarian National Convention, and there were more very open transvestites, transsexual people, with extreme, different social things that they were into there at the LNC because they wanted to be part of it, and they were excited about last year's candidate was Governor Gary Johnson from New Mexico. I've interviewed him. He's extremely socially liberal, but extremely fiscally conservative, which I think is weirdly in line again with what the Tea Party wants. And the Tea Party is just this weird super right faction of kooks that they're so right wing that they forget that what they really want can only be accomplished by privatizing and leaving people the F alone.
Yeah.
So when they forget that leaving you alone is really what they want, that means your bedroom too, not just your finances, not just your health care, not whatever they think they want, not touched by the government. That means the government leaves nothing alone. No marriage amendments blocking marriage. That means people can do what they want.
Right.
But libertarians...
It's cherry picking.
So how do they cherry pick? That's what I'm trying to figure out here. How do they decide that the gay, so that's purely...
And that's why it shifts from week to week as they get a new memo. Oh, now this group's mad. They're like the guy on the Sullivan Show, spinning this plate, but now these guys are mad over here, but now this one is wobbling, I gotta run back. That's why they all are drunk. They all look like they're falling apart. They're doing this Fado room-to-room runaround farce trying to hold a lie together.
Yeah.
And the one thing they didn't want was the internet starting to get the truth out, and it was starting to show TV shows that would have the truth and people publishing the truth, and it's disintegrating their little bubble there wasn't supposed to be that other data out there. It was only supposed to be our version of the BS out there.
Yeah.
That's falling apart. We're watching that part fall apart. This is like the Martian walkers in War of the Worlds. And they look like they're going to fight, but now there's liquid spilling out, and they're weak, and they're falling all over the place. Now you could knock them over.
They're disintegrating by their own bullshit, basically.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right, well, there are no spinning plates here, I promise you, because I don't know how to do it. Okay, let's stick with pot, because an interesting study came out with pot. Pot is hot these days. The Boston Medical Center and the Boston University School of Medicine have found, according to this new study, that marijuana has no negative effects on human health. That's right. Let's take a look at some of the study. They found that no differences between daily marijuana users and those using no marijuana in their use of the emergency room, hospitalizations, medical diagnosis, or their health status. Our findings suggest that the marijuana use has little measurable effect on self-reported health or healthcare utilization in adults using drugs identified in a primary care clinic. So this is obviously linking health directly to marijuana use, and they're not seeing any discrepancies. I'm going to guess that this doesn't surprise any of the three of us. Rick, I start with you.
Once again, I think they read their mail. Just like Dr. Sanjay Gupta suddenly read his mail and said, dude, you want to stay on the air? You got a lot of people who are furious with you. You got to give that up. So pretend it's a giant epiphany and change in your position on air. You're up in 5, write something good and go.
Yeah.
And I think
essentially he probably knew, but
he knew a long time ago, but his pharmaceutical backers, which might mean they are coming closer to their own cannabinoid pharma version of everything that'll work this time. The one says, okay, tell Sanjay he can ease up a little bit now.
Well, that's an interesting...
Really astute, because in the quote, it kind of tells you that.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's a really interesting theory, I think, that you think that they're somehow going to figure out the pharmacological version, and then...
That's one of the boom industries that's saving California and saving Washington and saving Colorado. The economies are boosting up like crazy from it. Someone who had the previous power base is going to pay a ton of attention to that and have huge, long oak desk meetings about what they're going to do to have their piece of that.
Yeah.
Like the way cigarette companies are figuring out now what packaging will look like.
Yeah, and
they're
this
planning just the business model. That means an inevitability. When they have the new munchie meal from Burger King,
right?
Everyone's prepping and ramping for it now.
So you'll get the weed next door to Burger King, and then you'll go in for the munchie meal at Burger King. So obviously this doesn't surprise us, but I mean, what is it about everybody that takes them so long? So Sanjay Gupta is a good example, and I know your answer already, but he was one of these people that was completely against it. Then he had this huge mea culpa a couple of weeks ago. Everything I knew was wrong, but I'm not a doctor. I knew that it was okay.
I think we all have for a very long time. I think there's two factors going in here. I think you're absolutely right. I think that even in that statement that you just read, you could see that the language they're using is starting to move towards it has no impact on people seeking treatment. It has no impact on the weight of the healthcare system is what they're essentially saying. They're saying emergency rooms and people coming in for treatment are no sicker, are needing no more care, no more financing from the government or anybody. And I think they're also paving the way for it to be legal so they could get money from it. And all they need to do is flip the switch in certain people who need the authorities to tell you. So right now we have lots of older baby boomers. We have lots of conservatives. We have other people that like authoritarian, like it or not, some people like authoritarian things to be told to them before making their decisions. Some people are just more comfortable that way. They're not comfortable getting their information from the internet or common sense. They like to be told ABC equals this, you know? So I think that once the government and once more studies funded by universities and once people like authorities like Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who's now an authority, apparently he's on CNN, great. But that's going to mean that people are more comfortable now with it. So we all knew this. I think people that are forward thinking know this, but it's just that last, you know, there's like the early adopters and there's that last wave. They need to be told it's okay. And now
what
they're
are
like,
those guys called? We have the early adopters. That sounds good.
Right.
What are the people who you have to drag at the end?
The dumb, deaf, and blind. I don't know.
The dumb, deaf, and blind.
No offense to the blind people and deaf people that are at home going, I knew that, and you know, come on.
Right, so just playing the devil's advocate here, as I have to do occasionally, is there any risk in this that if you make all this stuff, or if you make weed legal, that then kids will be trying it younger, and when their brains are forming, and you know the cognitive parts of their brain, and they're putting in weed that often now is much stronger than it used to be, and all that kind of stuff? Is there a risk?
Compare it to the alcohol model? Between the 20s and now, is maybe there's a prohibition to canceling prohibition model you can look at for that, and I could check the stats on that. It's an interesting, good question. I don't know what the numbers would be for that.
Yeah,
but like everybody.
So
if you're a kid and you want to drink when you're in junior high or high school, you're probably going to have a few drinks the same way. If you were going to smoke pot, you were going to smoke pot. I think you are correct by saying it's like prohibition. I don't think saying that it's legal for medical purposes is going to entice a kid. Like, oh, for medical purposes, this is cool. It's cooler for me to smoke now. I think maybe it'll make it a little less cool that it's a kind of a medicinal thing rather than, you know, like a naughty thing or just to get messed up.
Right, and the second you can get it at the Starbucks of weed, it won't be cool anymore. So final thought on this. 2016, is there a chance that one of the candidates, that a real sort of mainstream candidate, is going to get on board at least legalizing it at the state level? I could see maybe somebody doing that. Is that totally crazy?
You have a states' rights candidate possibly who will defer to that, but will not come out in support of it.
Okay, so somebody, probably a Republican who's big on states' rights, who will get no traction really.
Or a Democrat could say it too, but they would just say it's not federal government's responsibility. Look, Democrats it would behoove them to do that so they could say, look, we're not trying to be big government and regulate you. Let the states decide and kind of say, look, Republicans, if that's what you like, then you just like my policy.
It'll be the candidate on the ropes.
Right.
Pull out the pot, Floyd. Boom, throw that out there. Hey, but I may have all these scandals, but look what I brought here.
I got weed for everybody.
But come on.
Let's have
fun. You'll vote for me.
We like that guy. We don't know who he is, but we like him. Did you guys know that texting is causing stress? Everyone thinks that it's making your life easier, but it's actually killing you from the inside. That's right. Researchers at Washington and Lee University have found there's a correlation between texting and stress levels and texting and quality of sleep. I actually have started a thing where for a half hour before I go to bed, I'm off the phone. Believe it or not, I actually stop tweeting for a few minutes before I go to sleep. This doesn't surprise me that much, actually. Researchers found that people who send the most text messages experience the most sleep problems, and a higher number of daily texts was associated with more sleep problems. Let's look at some more info. People who send a lot of texts sleep worse because they feel pressure to reply to texts in the middle of the night. They sleep with the phone by their bed, so they're awoken by incoming texts. And people who communicate by text have more stress in their friendships. Texts are unable to convey the nuances important in discussing sensitive issues. That all seems pretty obvious to me, and I think we've all done that, where you send a tweet or a text or something right before bed, and then you're like, oh, did anyone respond? Or did this person respond? And then it's actually in your dreams. It starts burrowing its way into your brain. How much does this stuff affect you?
I think it came to me at a point later in my life where I don't think about it when I sleep. I can still get kind of grumpy and farty about some things to pull me out of it, but there's times when I realize I am reshaping the musculature of both my hands.
Yeah.
And the thumb, as opposable as it is supposed to be, was never meant to do micro work like this. And Cameron Diaz on the set of Bad Teacher showed me a trick for texting thumb. You take your finger here and you take your hand here, you go click, and you push back like that, and it pops the bone back, and it feels like neck crack good in your hand. And it also, we could be invaded by aliens right now and we'd have no idea because no one looks up anymore.
They could be flying above us.
Everyone's in a conversation, just not with the people near them.
Yeah, how dangerous do you think texting is really? Because losing that nuance and losing just the eye contact and little things that go on when you're talking to somebody, that we're becoming cold, aren't we, through texting?
I think it's interesting they focused on texting on this. We're talking about tweeting, they weren't talking about Facebook statuses. They're just talking about your interpersonal communication with people who you assumedly know.
Right, who you actually know, unlike the Twitter.
Right, which is the biofeedback loop you get if I sent a tweet and oh my God, to anyone an answer, and if not, I'm wanting to check that tick to see. So I think with this, it's interesting because that it's a chicken or egg situation. Were these the same type of people that before texting were the type of people that had to have their boyfriend call them in the middle of the night to let them know they were home? Are these the people that are already worried about where their children are constantly? Are these people going to be consistently feel the need to be connected or need to know what's going on with everyone in their social circle anyway? Or are these just people that would be stressing about what to have for breakfast tomorrow, what to wear? It's just replacement stress of am I getting a text or not? So I think in this situation, texting, you can say that this makes you more miserable and they may have isolated to texting, but I'd like to see the other habits of these people or what they did before texting existed that probably kept them up at night anyway. There's got to be some sort of correlation between people that can't sleep because of worry and anxiety and people that are consistently texting. But the young kids, I'd love to see the ages on this, because if it's kids that didn't have anything before texting, it'd be interesting to see if this is a new stress in their life.
Right, so is part of the problem here also that that you're willing to say things on text that you wouldn't say to someone in person, you know what I mean? Because of you losing all that nuance, you can be more direct. That's why I have a general thing, like I only text really for directions, or I'm standing on this corner, come meet me, or something, like I don't have the conversational text. I hate the conversation.
the other way, that once you put it in writing, someone has that forever. If I'm going to say some crazy shit to you, you better believe it's going to be in person, not through text.
You know this is being recorded, right?
Exactly, like that.
I make sure on FaceTime. You're lucky there's 3 states between us.
People that say more direct and crazier things via text message, I am like, what is wrong with you? Don't you understand that's in writing? Somebody could tweet out your text messages. People could put it on a blog.
When they Facebook a threat to you, I go, you just put it in print so everyone knows you're suspect one if anything happens, right? And you don't think, you can see like, delete. Like, no, I copied the page already.
Well, this guy sent me this whole thing on Facebook that was pretty kind of gnarly. He was hitting on me, and then when I didn't really reciprocate, it turned into this nasty thing. And I told some of his friends about it, and they're like, man, he would never do that in person. And I was like, well, then he's really stupid, because I just screen grabbed the whole entire thing. In 1 second, it could be everywhere. I didn't, bones there. I didn't do it because I was like, gosh, I don't want to be involved in this. But I mean, wouldn't you say, to me, that doesn't make any sense. If you're going to say something in person, then you'd be crazy.
Right. So there's a little of this that none of us grew up on this. We're not 14. And when I was reading this article, I kept thinking of that scene in Downton Abbey where the Dowager Countess sees electricity for the first time. The light turns on and she freaks out like this. Is a little bit of that with us because we didn't grow up on it. So there's this inherent fear of new things, even though everyone has new things when they grow up, and it usually doesn't destroy the generation. Life just keeps rolling on, right?
Those jalopies are spooking the horses.
It's exactly, it's kind of like that. People said television is ruining society because everyone's parked in front of the boob tube and you're on your TV, and now people are parked in front of the YouTube and they're watching their computer, and then people are parked in front of their phone and they're text messaging. So every generation has their Elvis or has their this thing is too wild for us or too damaging for us. And then who knows? Maybe later you're playing with your hologram is so dangerous because you don't have any real friends. Everything progresses to different stages of right.
And not to totally blow your mind, folks, but we are taping this at YouTube, and you're watching on YouTube. Whoa, that's nuts. All right, this is a completely crazy story. So burials in Japan have become so expensive, on average $27,000, which is like 2.2 million yen or so. They've become so expensive that people are launching their cremated relatives into space, which that part actually sounds kind of cool to me. You can send your relatives' ashes into space. Elysium Space Incorporated, which I wonder if that came out before the movie or not. I think it did. They will send the cremated remains of your mom or dad to circle the Earth for several months for only $1,990. That's a deal. And then you can, of course, track where your relative is because there's an app for that. That's right. Let's look at some of the facts about the service. About 1 gram of a person's remains are placed into an individual space-grade aluminum capsule. Missions will carry between 100 and 400 individual capsules, and cost of renting a burial plot, as I said, and a tombstone in Tokyo is about $27,400. So $27,400. So are we going to all end up in space? I guess that's where we'll start on this. Rick, are you going to space when you leave this mortal coil?
Well, that's one of those things that looks so great on paper.
Yeah.
And they're kind of, I hope they've factored in the ozone depletion, because if that's a space grade aluminum cylinder, some of them might start making it in. And the irony is, you know, you're at the funeral for your loved one and you get hit by them as this flaming meteorite slams in from, you know, upper atmosphere.
Yeah, gives new meaning to a sign.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, renting the space too.
Yep.
Renting it, you know, it's something that they got to evict them, you know.
Yeah.
You got to kick them out when they didn't make rent. I think that it might be safer than living in Japan too, at this point.
There's some
you
major
might
stuff.
Start living the live people up out of there too.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, what do you think? If it's a cheaper alternative, actually, the idea of having some part of you go into space when this thing's over actually kind of appeals to me. Yeah. What do you think?
I mean, for me, it's one of those things that's like frightening and cool when I think about it just emotionally. I'm like, oh my God, that's so scary. I don't even want to know about this. I'm like, wait, that's really cool. I want my ashes shot into space. I mean, where else do I want to be, you know?
Right.
It's like, we're such nomads. Where really, you want to be buried? Just be shot into space. Okay.
Yeah.
But seriously, I mean, think if it costs $30,000 to bury you, and this is safe to do, then it seems like it's a decent alternative. I mean, it sounds weird and it sounds freaky, and people are probably going to complain that something about it is morally wrong or whatever, but I want to know what the scientists say. I want to know what people that actually study space at NASA and everyone says, and if they're cool with it, besides the fact that we're going to have like space garbage people floating around.
Right, so that's the part. So the so the sci-fi part of my brain, immediately what I thought was, okay, we're going to send all this, well, gravity, of course, but we're going to send all these ashes of dead people up there, and then aliens are going to be flying by, and they're going to see the ashes, and they're going to think it's a threat. Like, look what we did to the last guys. Right. We're sending you their ashes.
They send themselves in concentrate form to attack us when it rains.
That's part two, where you put some water on it, and then the whole other city.
Intergalactic, like mafia sign, like a threat. Like you're getting too close there, aliens. Like,
in space, the dead fish is just
a dead fish on your porch, a dead horse in your bed, ashes.
It's Prometheus.
It is, yeah.
It's all, okay, so I just want to know where it goes. What happens? It just stays in orbit?
No, so they orbit it a couple of times around for a couple months.
And it's just ashes, so shouldn't it just kind of...
No, because it's in this capsule, and they're going to send a whole bunch of them up together.
And then what happens?
And then I think... No, I know. You track it, and then, like a meteorite, the remains disintegrate upon entering the Earth's atmosphere.
Okay, that's cool. I'm into that.
Yeah,
first of all, have you ever been to Tokyo?
No.
The apartments are like this small. People are like stacked almost on top of each other. It's incredibly expensive. It's incredibly busy and loud, and pollution is going up. And it's, you know, it's a nice city. It's my favorite city I've ever been to. But you can tell there's absolutely no space. So I can't even imagine. Oh, space. Sorry. So I can't. I mean, to me, I'm like, I have no idea where they would put these people, and if they're going to just disintegrate after that, that's kind of poetic and cool. I'm into this.
As long as they disintegrate, because every time you launch a rocket, you're putting another little hole in the ozone. You keep launching rockets at the speed they need to get rid of all the dead.
You have to be mass launching them in order to be cost effective. Can you imagine every time someone's dead, a new rocket is like
one per customer? It's going to be more of a limo rate than a cab rate. I'll tell you that.
If it's one per customer, it's not going to be $1,990.
No, I can't. If it's one customer, I'm sorry. You got to sweep your card again.
Yeah, it's got to be mass launch.
All right, people, we did a lot here. Let's end this shutdown. Let's legalize some weed. Let's shoot dead people into space. That's Jenn Hoffman. That's Rick Overton. You can check them out on Twitter. It's right beneath them right now. And subscribe. That's also right down there. And I guess we'll do this again next week. Okay. Hey guys, the Rubin Report is brought to you by Coupaw.com. They've got 75% off dog and cat chews, toys, accessories, home goods, and more. Use code RR for 20% off your next purchase. The link is right down there.